His parent, you know, it's funny about this. Doug Gottlieb's he's a dad. I'm a dad. We're parents. And the funny thing about Pittsburgh is that it has always been easier to be the hard dad and lighten up. Belichick was the strict parent. Now Belichick over time, you got Meek Mill in the locker room. He's supportive of player. He went very soft on Brady this year. Tom Coughlin, tough dad. And then the Mara family said, hey, you're turning purple on the sidelines. Lighten up. And then the Strahans were like, he's my dad. I love him. Very hard to be ice cream for breakfast parent and then come in and go, hey, go to bed at 9. Because all the kids are like, Dad's a softie. He'll never. Tomlin came into this league. He had pool tables and ping pong tables and shuffleboard all in the locker room. He took them out. And now he's in a situation, Doug, where Tomlin's got to be the tough dad and be the disciplinarian, and I don't think the players buy it.
It's really hard to do that. By the way, I think if you ask most players, and probably if you ask Joy's brother, most guys want to be coached. Most guys want discipline.
They do.
Kids, in fact, want discipline, right? They don't want unreasonable discipline or abuse, but they want discipline in their lives. You function better that way.
Of course, we all do.
It's no. I'll just tell you, my children, like we sleep Nazis, right? Like our kids go to sleep, and they're like, hey, other kids get to, like, that's fine, but you're not as nice a kid. You don't perform as well in school.
When you go to bed at 11.
When you go to, you're a complete mess.
Yeah.
Why? Because we wired you, because we wanted to have a life. We wired you to go to bed early.
Thank you.
You know, so you're in bed, you're reading a book, and we actually tuck you in every night to make sure. Whereas other people's parents, they let their kids go up and whenever
my
they fall
kids
asleep.
right now just went to bed at my house. My kids go to bed in the morning. That's how little. All right, so let's shift to this. Let's go to the playoffs.
Yes.
So you know how it works, Doug. If you and I suggest there's going to be an upset, fans go crazy. But there's going to be 1 to 2 upsets this weekend. Okay, the Texans are favored. Let's look at the wild card. Saturday early game. Texans are favored. I like the Colts. What say you?
I like the Colts. We saw this game in Houston just a couple of weeks ago. I mean, frankly, and look, it was way too premature. These teams weren't totally formed yet. But if the Colts take a tie early on at home against the Texans,
this game's in Indy.
This game's in Indy. And like, look, wake me up when you believe in the Texans in the playoffs.
Thank you.
I love what Chris Ballard has done to the defense. It's underrated. I love the fact that Marlon Mack gives them a legit running game.
No kidding.
And they have a tight end to throw to. I like Indy in this matchup, mostly because I saw this exact same game like 3 weeks ago.
And I would argue Indy's a little better than that, and Houston's a little worse than 3 weeks ago.
Yes,
I think both teams have gone in opposite directions slightly.
And he doesn't have the same range as he used to, but Adam Vinatieri indoors in the playoffs, I think I know what I'm going to get as far as field goal kicking.
All right, Fox, the late game Saturday, Seattle. I get Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, so I get an edge at coach. I get an edge at quarterback.
Agreed. And a very good running game.
Who do you like?
I like the Cowboys.
So do I.
I like the Cowboys have been – it's a weird year for Dallas. Dallas, since they built the Jerry's World, they used to be bad at home.
Now they're really good at home.
Now they're very good at home. I think for a long time – Jason Garrett knew his roster. You go back to when they lost to Houston and he was too conservative in overtime. He was too conservative because he was playing towards his defense. He knows he has a really good defense. Remember, they're going to get Zach Martin back. Tyron Smith didn't play last week, getting him back. Obviously, Zeke's going to get – they had the best of both worlds. They played hard, won a game, and they did so while resting some of their injured players.
Yep.
So they have the positive momentum. I think Seattle not reloading, not rebuilding is a great story. But they haven't been good away from home.
They're a better story than a team.
Yes, and as much as it feels like, and it may well, feels like every Seattle game comes down to Russell Wilson running around trying to make a play in the fourth quarter.
Good luck here.
I think this one comes up short because I do believe in that Dallas defense.
Minute and a half on each game.
Okay.
I think the Chargers go to Baltimore. Now, we were at that game.
Yes.
I think it's hard.
Baltimore kicked their ass.
They did.
Yes.
But I think it's very hard with that limited Baltimore offense to fool the Chargers twice in a month.
Correct.
I like the Chargers here.
I do too. Remember, that was without Austin Eckler, who is their Swiss Army knife back.
He's a great player.
And they get Hunter Henry back. Whereas as much as Antonio Gates was open some, Hunter Henry is a Pro Bowl caliber guy who hasn't played
tight end.
Hasn't played all year because of an ACL injury. He's going to be back for this game. And I think if you watch that game, they figured out Baltimore's offense. Obviously, Mark Andrews got open deep, one great throw from Lamar, but for the most part, the second half, Baltimore had no offense. Baltimore has to get off to a hot start. I don't think they do it against the Chargers. Chargers win the road.
This is where I think we'll have a disagreement. So we're 3-0.
Okay.
I'm going to take Philly to upset Chicago. I think Philadelphia, this is the best defensive line talent in the league. All these guys have been through these playoff wars. These are veteran players. Whatever it is, Nick Foles is darn good with his staff. Chicago, young quarterback, bright lights, late game Sunday. Doug, I think they're going to be tight. I think Chicago's going to be tight.
And it's really interesting because you're like, well, wait, they both know each other. Remember, Doug Peterson was in Kansas City before he was in Philadelphia. And, of course, Matt Nagy was in Kansas City before he was in Chicago. So the kind of the quirkiness of the offense may go away. But Chicago's defense is so good, man, and so good at home. And look what they did to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, they made Kirk Cousins look like an $8.40 quarterback, not an $84 million quarterback.
Right.
I like Chicago. I like the Bears playing at home. I love the Nick Foles story, but Nick Foles is like Ryan Fitzpatrick. For 2 or 3 weeks, great, but then ultimately people figure it out.
Yeah. So, well, you and I agree we'll take the Colts over the Texans, the Cowboys over the Seahawks, the Chargers over the Ravens. I would bet in Vegas right now it would be 75, 80% Bears. I got to tell you, though, this Philadelphia team it's so – I tell everybody, Fletcher Cox is Aaron Donald out east.
Yes.
And then Michael Bennett, Seattle gave him away, still an elite pass rusher. I'm forgetting one of their other defensive front guys. They have a bad secondary. I don't think Chicago will exploit it, but I think you got to give the NFL credit. They're smart. They put this game Sunday night for a reason. Do you know what Chicago's going to look like Sunday night? That's one of the great cities in the country for football. Like, I think we forget sometimes, Golden State was a great NBA city for 30 years. The teams were bad.
No, Chicago and D.C., those are Bears and Redskins towns.
Those are crazy cities for football. I think it's going to be so much fun to watch.
But also, the other point is we talk about football changing because of the weather, right? Football changes because of the weather. Obviously, Nick Foles played in some weather going back to last year, but with all the domes across the country, this one, that will feel and look like old school classic football, and you have two incredible defensive fronts. I have a greater belief in what they're doing in Chicago at playing at home.
All right, Doug Gottlieb will be on Speak for Yourself later. He's doing the whole day thing today, working. Great seeing you, buddy. The Duggar, we're back. Herd Hierarchy, our final one of the year. Top 10 teams in the NFL. Next.